I just think it's amazing that it speaks about the Board of Deputies, that I've lost count of the number of hustings that there have been now. The board has gone around the country to Leeds, to Manchester, to Glasgow, in a way which didn't happen a few years ago in my time, and very important to demonstrate the board's national reach. Equally important is the fact that there are no less than 4 candidates standing for president of the board, and they're all here tonight. And I think it's fantastic of them to come, considering they're probably exhausted and they are running busy campaigns. But that speaks to the collegial nature of the board. They're even talking to each other, I'm told. We also have no less than 5 candidates for vice president. So this is one of the most contested elections in modern times, which again speaks about the energy of the board and, I would say, the relevance of the board. But I'm going to leave that to the candidates to tell you that in their own way. Now, the order of opening 2-minute statements has been determined by random electronic means, and we're going to start with Ben.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here, and thanks very much to JCOS for hosting and to Johnny for chairing. It's a real pleasure to have been elected unopposed and to be returning as your treasurer. The board is such an important part of our community and does such essential work, and I'm very glad to be able to serve again. I just want to speak very briefly about the key goals and a couple of the priorities I have for the next 3 years. First of all, I see the role as the Treasurer and the F&O as supporting the other HOs in their work, ensuring the board is focused, ensuring that we build partnerships, ensuring that we spend where needed but spend wisely. Second, we need to secure our finances and our long-term stability through fundraising, through a common contribution, and through keeping our core costs stabilised, and I'm really sorry, and partnering where we can on projects to support shared communal goals. Third of all, on the organisation, I want to continue to encourage and facilitate involvement from all deputies, bringing back some of the projects we've done earlier this triennium and in previous trienniums, the new deputy speaking programme, accessibility, keeping the online and hybrid nature of our plenaries, going around the country as necessary, putting resources where necessary, and to empower deputies to lead projects, to collaborate with the professional team, to take our work forward, and of course to take responsibility for our investments, for our overall financial well-being, and for our risks. I'm really excited, I have to say. It's been great to hear from the candidates throughout the hustings. I haven't been around the country, but I've seen some of them online. I watched on YouTube. I was at the LJS a few weeks ago. And I will say whoever is elected from the candidates tonight, I know will have a strong and accomplished team. And now, with a little bit of time remaining, I will let you hear from the rest of them.
Owen.
Good evening. I'm Owen Power, and I'm really delighted to be here in this absolute... I'll begin again. Good evening. I am Owen Power, and I'm delighted to be here in this fabulous building to talk to you this evening. It goes without saying that it's going to be a case, very sadly, of all hands on deck on the work of the board for the next triennium, coping with the rise of anti-Semitism, anti-Israel hate, and indeed anti-Zionism. But nevertheless, in the spirit of progress and development, I want to stand as a vice president candidate to be a voice for diversity, the regions, and to me, most important of all, disability, because I'm terribly, terribly conscious we are excluding a large number of our community on the basis of inaccessible services and events. And I think it's a great opportunity for the board to change the culture and reach out and connect with disabled people. Thank you.
Next up, Adrian Kane.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jacos, and thank you, Johnny, as well, for taking the role as chair. I'm seeking support from my fellow deputies at a time of unprecedented challenge for the community. I'm standing on a communal record of over 40 years of service. So in the 1980s, I was president of the Union of Jewish Students. In the 90s, I established the Israel Practice Group of a leading international law firm, where I served for over 30 years. In the 2000s, I helped to establish the anti-academic boycott campaign Engage, and also established the London Jewish Forum. And in the 2010s, I became a trustee of the Jewish Leadership Council and the trustee of governance, as well as leading stakeholder engagement, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and became chair of Labour Friends of Israel. The terrible events of the 7th of October have given rise to huge challenges for our community. And our thoughts are with the people of Israel, with the families who have lost loved ones, and the hostages and their families. I've been down to the Gaza envelope on 2 occasions, and the things that I've seen and the testimonies that I've heard have been etched on my soul. And we all care and we all are anxious about the terrible conflict and the human suffering, and we all pray for a speedy resolution. Back here, we're concerned about policing, we're concerned about community safety, and we're concerned about the erosion of social cohesion. And these are very serious concerns, but we must also be clear that they shouldn't define who we are. And we're also concerned about the other challenges for the community, including cost of living, education, housing, and health and transport. The Board of Deputies is a microcosm of the wider community, and we've seen the increase in polarisation within that community. But the Board of Deputies is at its best when it builds compromise and consensus, and I intend to build a Board of Deputies to help build a Board of Deputies that are strong and secure into the future. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Andrew Gilbert.
Thanks, Johnny, and good. No, sorry, can I have the microphone? Thank you. No, it's there. Sorry, thank you. Good evening, and thank you, Johnny, and thank you, Jacos. Let's not kid ourselves. This is going to be a very hard time. The community's views are stretched. Today, I had a donor on the phone to me speaking about how a Jewish donor who had given a lot to refugee charities, who had said that their donations had been rejected. Rejected not because they were anything other than Jewish and because of other things that their charities do. I spoke to a journalist from a right-wing newspaper, one of the major white-headed papers, the major papers, who said that, talked to me about the experience of being on the PSC demonstration and how he had felt that the people are taking a different understanding of what's going on, and we're seeing a community that's stretched. And as our community stretches, this becomes very difficult. Deputies will, people may know, have already been on some people on the Jewish bloc on the PSC demonstration, others were going to be on Enough is Enough and would have been, and we are therefore looking at a very different community for the next few months. And in that way, we've got to work out how we do engagement. And engagements can be very different. In 1858, when V.D. Lippmann wrote a book about the Jews of Britain, the history of the Jews of Britain, and it finishes in 1990. And all that period, the role of the Board of Deputies was for representation. Representation now is something very different to it was not just in 1858, but in 1990. Today, with whether it's with Microsoft Teams, whether it is with all the other tools that we have in terms of engagement, we can engage in a way that we never could before. So the challenge is, how do we do that engagement? And it's going to be a hard task, and it's going to split us, and we've got to hold it all together. What a challenge.
Thank you. Jeremy Michelson.
Thank you, Johnny, and thank you, JCOS. My name is Jeremy Michelson. I am the chair of the Regional Deputies Assembly and Council. And in seeking your support for Vice President of the board, I feel that I'm the one who can bring the board together. The board has become polarised, and it leads, as Andrew said, a polarising community, unfortunately. I have a record of deputy empowerment. As regional vice chair, I successfully campaigned for the appointment of a board of deputies regional manager. And as a member of the Communities and Education Division, I passed a resolution calling for more deputy input before board and board staff and honorary officers meet ministers and civil servants. In Greater Manchester, I empowered educators to set up the Judaism for Schools programme and the Northern Holocaust Education Group. I want to minimise the isolation of regional deputies and also of South London deputies by having sub-regional deputies meetings and encourage proactive use of WhatsApp groups. Anti-Semitism must be fought by building alliances with other faiths and ethnic groups. I intend to mobilise the skills of deputies in task-orientated work to drive forward the board's agenda. We don't make enough use of deputy skills. Our support for Israel must be unwavering. We must work with the Jewish Leadership Council and grassroots organisations so that our community can continue to live in peace and harmony in the UK. This is a moot point at the moment, but we've really got to push on it. A united board, empowered deputies, and a positive dynamic leadership is what I aim to provide. Thank you.
And last but not least, to my left, Denise Lester.
Thank you, Jonathan. Fellow deputies, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vice President, it's a pleasure to be here and to address you. I'm standing so as to assist, protect, promote the board, protect our community and our way of life. My communal background encompasses UJIA, Jewish Care, JWA fundraising, and long-standing service of the board as a deputy for 40 years. I've served on the Communities and Education Division and latterly for a number of years on the Defence Division. At this crucial, critical time, I think that the board and the community needs someone who's an experienced solicitor advocate with the direct experience of serving on the Defence Division to counter, protect anti-Semitism and use my unique skill set in going to the government, as I have done in the past, to promote and protect our community. I'm an experienced chair in the wider community at National Law Society level and within the family justice system, and I'm involved in chairing members of the judiciary and initiatives which enable me to know that I can pitch to that level. In relation to other communal organisations, we need to have that collaboration and reach with the CST, CAA, JLC and others, and I have good relationships. I also work with grassroots campaigners and have worked as a photographer with the Marcel Noble on the Lovelock Bridge Initiative, the Blow the Chauffeur for Hostages, and the forthcoming campaign for Art for Hostages, and also musicians within the Israeli community. I've been to Israel. I was on the board's mission. I photographed the photos that you will see, some of the photos in the video that's up online. I know also, as I'm media trained, the difference of the media narrative. I will work for all deputies regionally across all ages and spectrums of the community and promote and protect. And I'm determined to protect our community. I seek your vote. Thank you.
I'm going to invite questions from the floor to candidates. But I'm going to ask the first one, if I may. we were very perturbed, if not altogether surprised, when we read last night that encampments, Gaza, Free Palestine, so-called encampments, were going up on UK campuses, and that raises the spectre, and I think for those in this hall, the fear of the repetition of the scenes being played out on American campuses, now on our own campuses in this country. I'm going to ask the candidates, or not all of them necessarily, what would be your strategy for countering this? I'm going to start with you, Owen.
Thank you. This really, really is an incredibly difficult situation. My inclination tend to be to take the risk, to ignore it, hoping it'll go away. Now, whether that's realistic or not, that's the problem. But I suspect in Manchester, I can't really speak about Leeds, but in Manchester they tend to be these great big displays of protests, etc., but fizzle out. I think the temptation is to brazen it out and hope it will go away. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm into brazening it out. I think this is we're in a situation now where we have to address it. But first of all, we have to stand behind UJS. And UJS, in terms of campus, have to take the lead, and we have to be there to back them the whole way through. So the first thing we would do, and need to do in this, and I'm sure the current HOs are doing, is actually sitting down with UJS. The second thing is we need to use, as you Jonathan, did in your time, ensure that we're meeting with the Vice-Chancellors and building up and working on those relationships and really seeing what can be done at the same time as talking to the Education Secretary and taking full action with the Minister for Higher Education to see what can be done in terms of the law. And we have to out this as anti-Semitism. We have to ensure Jewish students on campus are protected, and Israeli students and others as well. So this is no standby. It will only get worse. And I'm sorry to disagree, Owen. This is one where we're going to have to get sadly involved, but let's do it. Never go ahead of UJS. Let UJS lead and all those other organisations on campus. That's it.
Jeremy.
Thank you. Andrew said a lot of what I would have said. Absolutely. UJS really have to be the ones who lead on this, but we must be with them and make sure that they know that if they feel that they need our support, we're there straight away. Yes, absolutely. Talk to Vice-Chancellors, no question about it, and the Education Secretary and Higher Education Secretary. I think the point we need to make very clearly is that it's one thing to protest and one thing to disagree, with us about what's going on in Gaza, and that's perfectly reasonable. But when Jewish people and Jewish students and Israeli students are singled out, without even talking with them or anything about that, they're just lives are being made miserable. That really is something that smacks of anti-Semitism, and we have to call that out. And if it goes to the wire, then we really do have to bring in the law, and if necessary, even talk to the Prime Minister.
Adrian?
Thank you very much. So again, I would endorse the notion that we should be foremost working with the Union of Jewish Students. A number of us here were with UJS last night at at an event to celebrate their fellowship programme, and we got the opportunity to talk to a number of students who are at Leeds, and I've also got familial connections with a student currently at Leeds. The only thing I would add is the importance of being able to walk about campus, that you shouldn't be blocked You should be able to access your lectures and your tutorials. You should be entitled to be able to use the facilities. If there's any sense that people are being physically blocked, people are being intimidated, that's intolerable. And I agree with the strategies of speaking with the Vice-Chancellor, the Education Ministry, and with other authorities, but at the end of the day, these have got to be the red lines that we go into these meetings with at the foremost. And we have to be clear that our students should have the right to an education. They should also have the right to freedom of expression as well.
Denise.
I'd just like to pick up on all of that. There are various nuances that flow. Obviously, UJS is the lead on this, but the board may need to facilitate, as indeed is the case, resource and go to the community for resource and liaison with the CST. Students do, and everybody does have the right to education under the Human Rights Act, and they should go, as Adrian said, about their business peacefully, but they also need to be educated and empowered as to whether or not they themselves are at risk of breaking the Public Disorder Act. So there needs to be legal advice given to them as to how they conduct their business and the strategy of their campaign, and there probably needs to be education lawyers as well as criminal lawyers on hand if, unfortunately, there could be incident. We do need to monitor this and go to the government because it is absolutely not right if there's anti-Semitism. And thank you very much.
I'd like to invite the next question from the floor, please. Does anyone have a question they would like to ask? Yes, sir. The gentleman in the brown top.
Thank you. I'm interested in what you've been saying now about what needs to be done. I have the last, 10, 12 years edit a lot of books for publishers that are produced for as university textbooks. It's very obvious, and it sticks in my throat a little bit to say it because it's not where I am politically, and so I don't want it to sound as though I'm kind of, on the far right myself. I'm not, or anywhere near it. But there is an underlying attitude in a lot of those books, which I assume reflects quite a lot of people who are working in universities, an attitude that is anti-Western, and Israel is seen as part of the West, part of, a puppet of the United States of America. I just wonder what the candidates have to say about, really, there's a bigger job even than what needs to be done about the present situation, about the experiences that that Jewish students are having, but there is a longer term issue there that is going to be much harder to address, and I wonder what the candidates have to say about that.
I'll ask Ben to contribute on that one. Thank you.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you that there's a huge job we have ahead of us to educate, to communicate, to send a positive message about our community, about the things we care about the expectations we have from the UK community as a whole, from universities, from academics, from students. We have to go out, we have to be positive, we have to tell our story, we have to frame it in a way that people understand and appreciate it. And then as all my potential future colleagues have made clear, we have to fight for what we believe in and stand up when we need to oppose things.
I think the questioner's point, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, sir. I should have asked you. William Baginski. Mr. Baginski, I think your point was that there's an awful lot of material that is washing around our universities that you feel is propaganda in nature and anti-Israel or even anti-Semitic. And we read about universities being funded by Qatar and other. Was that something you were expressing concern about? Andrew, do you want to say something to that?
Yeah, I'm sort of, this is about post-colonial theory and how we oppose it and how we deal with it. if you look at all the Harvard-Harris poll each month, which comes out, and I would urge you to look at it online, each month it's different, and each month it tells a very difficult story, a lot of it about campus. And when it's post-colonial theory is this concept that about white supremacy that people take on, that sort of Jews are part of a colonial white majority, and when they put that out, most people in this country wouldn't believe it. However, if you look at 18, 24-year-olds, they absolutely believe it. And if you look at what campus, this is where we're seeing things, both in the United States and here. We have to find ways of challenging these understandings, building a much greater understanding in our own community of what is being spread out there. And this is when we're working across different student groups, working across the political sphere. And it's not something that many of us have got that understanding of. And if we're going to engage in that, we have to find new tools to take that on. Very different pieces. But William, thank you very much for challenging on that. It's really important.
I'll ask Adrian, so then I won't ask the other candidates on this question, and then I'll give them the chance on later questions.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of things really. In terms of what we can do practically, so I'm very much involved with LSE, where I'm an alumnus, and we've been working with the dean of one of the faculties there to deal with the issues. And there are great concerns around bias with academic staff, and where that's particularly an issue is where people, we think, are marked down on work that they do because they've departed from that sort of narrative where they're presented alternative views, and that's often the case when it comes to Israel. So these are tough cases, but we certainly should be supporting students where we feel, where we've got evidence, a prima facie case, that they've been discriminated against as a result. And likewise also in terms of programmes that faculties and departments put on to try and ensure that they're balanced as well in their output. These are easy things to say. In practice, often it involves a bit of an uphill struggle, but it's something we just have to do.
Thank you. I will invite other questions from the audience. I'm going to say now that although Israel is so much on our minds, I'll also be looking at questions that go towards our domestic concerns and the health of our community. So I'll take the next question. Yes, do identify yourself. I know who you are, but not everyone might do.
That's because I've known you longer than you've known me.
I won't tell them how old I'm going to be in June, because that might embarrass you.
It won't embarrass me, you know that. Vicky Harris, Deputy at the moment for Hampstead Garden Suburb Synagogue. I'd like to hear from our candidates how they will ascertain what they should do and say to represent the Jewish community.
Right, I'm going to repeat the question, and that is what candidates will do and say to represent the Jewish community. How?
How they will, what they will do and say to ensure they represent not perhaps their own views,
Oh, I see.
but the views of the Jewish community.
How will you...
Sorry if I didn't-
No, that's all right, I get it now.
Apologies to you, Owen, that I didn't stand up and I have a microphone.
No,
Don't worry.
I'm going to want to make sure first of all, I want to praise Owen. I don't think the other candidates will mind. It takes considerable courage to stand when you are also challenged. And kol hakavod, Owen. The question is, how will you ensure when you speak publicly that you're speaking for the whole community and not just representing your own views? Owen, over to you.
You've asked the most difficult question ever. I really don't know how any one of us can stand up and say we're representing the voice of the entire Jewish community, taking into account how diverse we are, which is a marvellous thing. You know, I can't stand up and speak for the Haredi community, can I? So there's so many difficulties. So we've got to work closely together as a team, and as it were, take it in turns to speak, representing the different voices of the Jewish community. I think that's the important thing, that no one single voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
Thank you very much. And Vicky, you certainly bowled a bouncer on this one, but it's a good one. I think the way I would go about it is, if I was elected, I would pretty quickly try and arrange meetings with stakeholders in some of the major denominational groups, obviously the US, the Liberals, Reform, Majority, etc., and just get a general idea of their views on a number of issues that are likely to be coming up. So I'd have an idea of what they're doing. I think Owen's got a point when he says that we are a very, very diverse and to a certain extent a very polarised community. And of course you bring an element of yourself into that when you're talking. But nevertheless, I think it can be done. And I think you can work with by talking to different, as I said, stakeholders. I see no reason why somebody can come up with a balanced and reasonable approach.
Thank you. Denise.
Thank you. Well, there's various aspects to this, Vicky. There's the fact that we do, as an umbrella organisation, we are the democratically elected representative body of British Jews. So we need to look to ourselves with our various organisations and viewpoints as well. And I think that we should be having internally regular conferences to ascertain the zeitgeist within and the mood within the community. But also, I think that we should be going outside and holding open surgeries with the community, with security considerations, and also engaging with those who wouldn't necessarily go to a synagogue, and showing them how we are relevant and listening and care about them. And the most diverse Jews and those that don't practice are the ones you want to reach. There's also the media, the mood, music of the time and the media, and the need to respond rapidly to issues as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Taking that question further, if I might pick up where Vicky left off, I'd like to ask this question of candidates. The Board of Deputies was founded in 1760, when I dare say times were rather different from today. I'm not actually old enough to remember, contrary to what most of my friends think. Given that we're now 260-something years on, is the board the model, the right model, or should we be looking to change it? Adrian.
I think there's something very precious about the Board of Deputies. I mean, I've been, I touched on some of it in my opening words, but I've been involved in a whole, as many people here, been involved in a whole swathe of organisations within the community. And actually, the board is quite unique to, I know people complain about it and there is a deficit and it could be more accountable for sure. But nevertheless, compared to anything else in the community, it's very unique and it's very special. I think there are cultural issues, however, in the board, and I did allude to them in my opening remarks. There is this huge issue around polarisation, and I think the board has been dogged by controversy over a number of years, over the last several triennia, possibly going back earlier. And I think actually nowadays people want to see impact, they want to see output and they want to see impact. And they don't really want to spend their communal levy, or we don't call it levy anymore, communal contribution, on providing for a debating society. So we do need to, on the one hand, make sure we are accountable and that we do encourage debate, but on the other hand, we have to focus on deliverability.
Andrew.
Thanks, Johnny. I think, and in sort of an answering Vicky as well, we read in our historical books always in the, when we're looking at the Mishnah or the Talmud, we find arguments on both sides, and it's quite legitimate sometimes not just to have a single opinion. And the board's got to be able to reflect on and be able to express those different opinions, whether we're working with the Haredi community, when you have their private schools and we're dealing with hardship, or when you're working with the United Synagogue because they want to have the kosher upgrade for free school meals, or when you're working on the needs of the Reform and Progressive community in terms of their position in Israel. So whichever part of the community we're working with, we can't necessarily show we're owned by any one part of the community. We have to be able to express all those views equally and represent all those within the community and wider.
Next question from the floor, please. The lady here. Thank you. You had your hand up. Microphone coming your way. Thank you. Please tell us your name.
Judith Ornstein. If there was one thing, just one thing, that you could change, what would it be?
Denise.
Well, I think that the board is perceived by some in the community as being inward-looking and potentially self-serving and elitist. And I don't want that to be the case. I want the board's positioning as the organisation, stakeholder that goes to government and is considered externally as the premier organisation to deal with on behalf of the Jewish community, to be equally valued within our community. So I think we've got a job of outreach and engagement with the public on our hands over the next 3 years, and we've got to be even more accountable and visible to them as well. Thank you.
Jeremy, what would you change?
Thank you. Thanks for that question, Judith. I think, personally, that one of the most interesting things that's happened over the last few years, the last 10 to 15 years, is the rise of grassroots organisations springing up to deal with a certain issue. So, for example, I got 2 WhatsApps today from the Northern Advocacy Group, who are really pushing to try and get Israel's message across. And also helping to fight anti-Semitism on student campuses. And I don't see them as a danger. I see them as an opportunity, because they're bringing a lot of resources to a very narrow front, which the board can't do. The board is trying to do so many different things. And therefore, I think what we need to do is to find ways of working with these people. Some of these organisations maybe don't want to work with us. And I think that's something we're going to have to go quite carefully. And to say we're not looking to take you over, but on the other hand, we are the ones who are we are the democratic body, and therefore we feel that we should work together on these things.
Owen, did you get the question, Owen? Yes.
I did indeed, and it's a question that I'm really delighted that's been asked. It won't be a surprise that I would love to change the culture on lack of accessibility for disabled people to participate in all activities of the board. I would very, very much like to see a major change. Now, already the professional staff I know are committed to doing so, but we really need to bring everyone to get involved to support disability, accessibility and awareness. Because at the end of the day, it's up to the individual deputies to support change. We've just had a really good example of how it can happen by the Hustings, in the sense that arrangements have been made to enable me to participate. It hasn't cost anything, it just needs a degree of thoughtfulness. So change will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian, what would you change?
So a couple of different things. First is there used to be a thing called the Political Oversight Group, or POG, which along the way was discarded. And the POG brought together on a regular basis organisations involved in advocacy. For example, I used to attend as Labour Friends of Israel, but Conservative Friends of Israel, BICOM, the board, JLC, a whole range of organisations were there. And what we are, and there's a real pressing need, what we are kind of lacking at the moment is we're not that joined up as a community. We're certainly not as joined up as we should be. So that's one thing I'd want to bring back. The second thing is, I have in my mind this picture of a plenary in the British Medical Association, Tavistock Square in 2019, where literally everyone in the hall, there's about 150 people there, I think, were holding up the manifesto. And I don't think we can go back to that because of COVID and the hybrid nature of meetings now. But what I would like to see is this kind of sense of comradeship come back within the board. And that, I think, is really pressing as well.
Well, you got two things in there. Andrew?
Yeah.
I'll invite you to stick to one if you can.
Half empty, half full. I think that the board has got this sort of negative impression of itself at times and in the community. And I would just be really focusing on the fact of all the good stuff that we're doing and trying to change that understanding that actually a lot of people out there think we're doing pretty good. And yet last night when we saw UJS create one of their projects to create a Bodel, they wanted to actually see that the board was the model by which the young people would use to focus on something they would want to build. Shows that we can't have it all wrong, surely.
Thank you. Next question, please. This gentleman, will you give your name? My microphone's coming. Thank you.
Michael Lever, Northwood and Pinner Liberal Synagogue, now known as ARC. Mr. Chairman, my first question is to you, sir. I understand that one of the vice chairmen eventually emerges as the senior vice chairman who is responsible for being a deputy to the president in the event of the president being elsewhere or whatever it is. So would you be kind enough in a few moments' time in explaining to me how the position, and I don't know whether it's official or unofficial, how the position of senior vice president emerges. The second point that I would like to make is that I get the impression that everybody is castigating the board as it stands at present for not being this or not being that. I can only tell you that I joined as a representative from my synagogue. I joined the board 3 years ago, prepared to be, not knowing a great deal about the functions of the board, but prepared to be quite critical. And I can only tell you that at the end of my 3-year stint, I am full of admiration for the way that the board operates. First of all, it is, to the best of my knowledge, the only pan-Anglo-Jewish organisation which pretty well represents all types of Judaism. And there appears to be, and there certainly hasn't been to my knowledge, any criticism as to whether you happen to be a member of an Orthodox congregation or a member of a liberal, reform, Masorti congregation. Everybody has worked extremely well, and I have never heard any criticism of any organisation or anybody or organisation on the grounds that they are a member of that particular point. And
I'll have to ask you to bring your remarks to a conclusion because other people are waiting to ask questions.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to sit down at this point if you would kindly answer my first question.
I'll do my best to answer the question. Thank you for asking me a question. Lucky I'm not standing for office. I will be corrected by Michael, the CEO, if I'm wrong, but in the election for the vice presidents, 3 vice presidents are elected, and the one that gets the most votes becomes the senior vice president, Have I remembered correctly, Michael?
Most votes on the first ballot.
Most votes on the first
First
ballot because we have a single transferable vote. Thank you very much. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Next question from the floor, please. I see Judith. Would you introduce us? And then I'll ask Jonathan. Thank you.
But you're a lady. All right.
No, I'm not getting... I once got into terrible trouble at the board.
Only one.
In ages past, doing my best, say ladies first, and I came under withering fire, mainly from ladies. So I'm not asking you because you're a lady, although I'm asking you because I saw you first. Yes.
All right. Hello, I'm Judith Prinsley from Muswell Hill, Board of Deputy. You've come up with lots of very interesting ideas and solutions to many of the things that you've discussed, and I think we'd all, find them very interesting. If I had to say to you, what 3 skills were the most important to you in implementing this and your values, what would you say?
What 3 skills are the most important for you to carry out your responsibilities as a Vice President? Just hold up, Owen, I'll let you wait on that, and I'll start with... And values. Denise? 3 in total, probably. Denise?
Integrity, resilience, and the combination of a legal skill set, analytical risk management, and communication skill set. So that's the embracing. And in relation to values, service, love of God, avodah, Kadush Shab, and service to the community, for the community. And that means listening and embracing all strands of Judaism and humanity and making a difference. Tikkun Olam. Thank you.
Denise, I'm going to come back to you. Can you be a Vice President if you're not a lawyer?
Yes, of course, of course.
Thank you. Just thought we'd clarify that.
As one lawyer to another.
Jeremy.
Oh, thanks for that, Judith. Another bouncer. Basically, I think I've got a number of, I wouldn't say unique skills, but certainly skills that a lot of people won't have. For example, I was dying to answer William's question because basically I have a broad and in-depth historical knowledge, seeing as I've read history since I was 9 years old and absorbed it with gusto, and I'm still reading it today. So I do have this broad sweep of historical ideas and events, and therefore I'm able to place things in context. Now, obviously, that will have more impact in certain realms of the board's work than others. Secondly, as you might have noticed, I am a people person. I'm a schmoozer, and that means that I get on with everybody. I get on. There's very, very few people who I've never got on with, and I think that's very, very important, particularly, obviously, with the group of honorary officers. And finally, I like Denise. I think I do have the analytical skills, and I'm also very much, I suppose, a follower of the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, whose orthodoxy was inclusive, attracted and not repelled, and I think that certainly pushes me on because and enables me to deal with all sections of the community.
Owen?
Values, I would say patience and kindness. Experience, I think lived experience as a disabled person that overcame obstacles. A lifetime experience of community activism, bringing about change on a number of levels. I think that's a great deal to bring to the board. I know that sounds pushy and arrogant, but I do think it is probably unique at the moment. Thank you.
Adrian?
Well, I mean, I'd have to say that I would take everything that the three previous candidates have just said and incorporate those as mine. Just to add to that, I think that there has to be a sense of service and a sense of community, and you see the community as part of your family. And I also think it has to be rooted in Judaism and Jewish identity. And I think that patience, as Owen said, is a very important virtue, and to have a consultative frame of mind, and also to be able to read a brief and digest it and analyse it. And finally, I think there's a question of personal judgment. And I'll just finish off by saying, through organisations like London Jewish Forum, where I've worked for many years, I've always been experienced in dealing with diverse and pluralistic views and trying to find ways to synthesise them. So I think that's what we need. Thank you.
Andrew?
Yeah, thank you. Communal experience that I've had for many years, like Adrian, co-chairing London Jewish Forum, chairing the Reform Movement, Limud, strategic, civic duty, collaboration, co-work, collaboration, delivery, in terms of Jewish values, elu ve'elu dibrei Elohim hayim, the concept that we're all equal, and understanding that in the image of God, and created in those words, and am echad im lev echad, one. The sense of one people with one heart, and how we do bring that into action. I think those would be and networking, a mixture of all those things. How's that?
Thank you. Before I come to Jonathan's question, I'd like to slip something in, just to disturb the equilibrium a bit, and so that it's not all about sweetness and light. I want the candidates to consider what would happen if the government of the State of Israel took a position with which you sense a strong groundswell of opinion in the Board of Deputies disagreed with. What would you do? Adrian?
So, as I said in my opening remarks, we're at our best when we operate on the basis of compromise and consensus. So it's not good enough that part of the board defeats another part of the board, or that the board takes a position which doesn't really carry the community with it. It's very important to be the representative of British Jewry, that we do carry the community with us. So I think that in that situation, one would want to consult widely, and it wouldn't just be with deputies, but also with stakeholders. And what comes out at the other end of it should be something that's framed in as broad a way as possible to carry the most people as possible. So as an example of that, for example, a couple of years ago, we adopted, or we confirmed, our two-state position, but that is a very broadly worded resolution which doesn't deal with things like borders, timing, any of the nitty-gritty of the position, and the reason for that is to try and carry as many people as possible, including the community.
Jeremy, your earlier question suggests that you wouldn't even admit the question because your support for the Israeli government would be axiomatic. Is that fair?
No, it isn't. I'm certainly not a fan of the present Israeli government, but I am also very aware of that we are a divided and polarised community, and that therefore any actions taken, anything said, has got to be done with a great deal of thought. And a couple of years ago, I think we the board, that is, made a very, very bad mistake in the way they, not in criticising the fact that Bezalel Smotrich was there, but the way in which they did it, which I felt was quite frankly appalling, and said so to Marie at the time. Therefore, and also I'm aware that rushing out into a public statement in this particular time merely gives a sword into the hands of a Molech, quite frankly. And therefore we have to, we work behind the scenes. We work through the embassy. If necessary, we go to, one of us that is, goes to Israel and talks to people and explains our situation and why we feel the way we feel, whatever that may be. whatever that may be. But yes, as I think Andrew quite rightly said, I think it was Andrew who said it, that we've got to carry the whole community, or as much of the community as we can, with us. There's no point in coming out with statements either one way or the other.
Jeremy, time's up.
Yeah, that won't carry the community.
Ben, I'd like you to, if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess I'll pick up on Denise's answer to the previous question and answer very simply that there's no substitute for good judgment. There's no substitute for speaking to people and listening and for taking a view. Ultimately, we're electing officers here. We're a large community. We're a large organisation. We have representatives of 180, 190 different, different community organisations and synagogues. But ultimately, we're electing 5 honorary officers, and we're electing a president. And we have to trust at the end to the judgment of the voters and then to the person who they elect.
Jonathan, your question.
Jonathan Brodie, Deputy for Kingsbury Synagogue. It's to the credit of the board how well it coped with COVID and the move to having meetings online. But what it's meant is now lots of deputies are quite happy, even if they don't live too far away from JW3, to still carry on participating online rather than attending in person. And also it meant that the last year's regional meeting in Manchester wasn't very well attended, and the one this year had to be cancelled in Edinburgh because there wasn't sufficient support. So do we need to say that the idea of a regional weekend has had its day, or do we need to do something to reinvigorate it? And if so, what would you do?
Owen, can I repeat the question for you? I'm not sure how much of it you got. Has the idea of a regional weekend had its day? And is the fact that you can attend the meeting online resulted in a reduction of personal attendance, which is represents prejudice to the board? You're from Manchester, I think, aren't you?
That's right, yes.
Would you like to start answering?
Yes, of course. No, I most certainly don't think the regional weekends have had the day, far from it. I think it really is a case of we need to work out from people that live in the regions what do they want to offer, and to sort of get a consensus of what people want to attend. Now, there's no substitute for attending things, whether it's services, meetings, in person, because that's where all the work happens with networking, so on and so forth. So we're just not going to resort to Zoom. At the end of the day, I really do think it's vital that we communicate together to work out a good strategy for regional weekends so we can all get together, whether it's Manchester, Brighton, or whatever. But we need to ensure that events are accessible and not too costly. Thank you.
Denise?
Jonathan, it's great to see you. And the fact that it's great to see you, because you're very active on our WhatsApp chat groups or whatever, is indicative that there's no substitute for in-person meetings. And the board, I don't think the board regional meetings have had their day. I really enjoyed going across the country and sensing the complexion of other communities. We're at our best when we stand together, when we meet each other in person. You can feed off the commitment of other Jews and talk about common issues. I think there are issues of cost. I think we need to accommodate those who cannot access the regional meetings, also have them online, the disabled, those that may not be able to afford it. But I think that we should be out there. We should not be London-centric at all. And I say that knowing that there are deputies here from, one from Leeds, at least. So, 2 actually. So, we should be out there and we should all engage with each other. Thank you.
Andrew, lastly.
So actually, I think it takes a bit of innovation and creativity. Jonathan, like me, you've been involved in Limud. We've also seen with JLM that we put on a regional event in Manchester that had 120 people, a whole series of politicians there, very, very successfully. I'd like to see the regional weekend replaced by a regional conference. I think we can create something that's very different, open not just to deputies but to a wider group of people. The fact I think it's possible to have it sponsored. The JLM conference in the north actually made money and got huge sponsorship from organisations. I think we can create something very, very different that would be very interesting. So I don't think we have to do same old. And I also think that I want to speak up. We could never do the engagement that we need to do if it wasn't for online and Zoom and things like that. So I think we've got to take the positives, but also realise how we do in person and do it much more creatively and do it much better.
Have we got a question from the floor? While you're thinking about it, I'll perhaps try this one. We're sitting tonight in a Jewish school. I well remember when I stood and there were hustings, somewhat to my surprise, one of the most fiercely argued over issues was whether Jewish faith schools were a good thing, and it was put to me that they separated Jewish children from non-Jewish children as compared to the schools that some of us attended when we were children. And I thought it might be a good idea to ask the candidates what their view was about that, and I'd be happy to hear any particular comeback when we come to it from members of the audience who might have their own views. Jeremy.
Thank you, Jonathan. As someone involved in education, I've done a lot of thinking about this, and also both my daughters attended Jewish primary and secondary schools, but not without a lot of thought, because there was this concern, the only non-Jews that people meet are the milkman, the dustman, etc., etc. Is that really good? But on the other hand, I also did the Jewish Educators Fellowship from 1988 to 1990, and that opened my eyes about the poverty of Jewish learning in so much part of this community, unfortunately, and particularly in my generation, I think. And so basically, we took the attitude that before the kids went out to university and out into the wider world, I wanted them to have Jewish literacy. And you can't get that without, on 3 times a week cheder, between the age of 5 and 13, or even the age of 5 and 15, you're not getting much more than a term and a half's teaching in total. If you add all the hours together, that's just not sufficient. So, yes, I feel that Jewish schools are valuable, but it also needs parental support to back up whatever is being taught at the school.
Owen, do you think Jewish schools are a good thing?
I certainly do, but ultimately, though, no one individual can sit here and sort of say, we're not having faith schools, or we are having them and everyone's got to go to them. At the end of the day, it's up to the individuals to decide what they particularly want for their children and indeed for themselves. Though, of course, it's really important, though, I think, for organisations like the board to foster education. Because, in a way, sort of the best education happens to us when we're adults. We appreciate it more. So I think I would put a great deal of emphasis on the importance of education in our communal lives, rather than necessarily pushing the idea of traditional school, as it were. Thank you.
Adrian?
So my 3 children went to Jewish primary schools, but then went on to non-Jewish secondary schools. And I'd say that I wouldn't hold myself out as an expert on the effect of Jewish schools, but obviously I've got my own anecdotal-based knowledge. And there are challenges outside of the Haredi world, at least. There are challenges around Limudei Kodesh and Jewish literacy, as Jeremy put it. And there's also a decline in youth movements, which perhaps one can partly point to Jewish schools as causing that. And there is a sense, certainly for my generation, who predominantly went to non-Jewish schools, that our Jewish identity was actually strengthened through going to non-Jewish schools. And also we were better equipped in life to deal with some of the challenges, such as students are now facing in campus. But I do give a caveat to all of that. I'm not an expert on this, and I think there should be a lot more quantitative research which is done to actually show the results.
Thank you. I've got a question for Ben. Yes. Ben, how would you raise money for the board, assuming that that would be one of the things that you would wish to do?
Yeah, there's no substitute for fundraising for something that people believe in and something that people hold in esteem and something that people want to give money to. So we can't just go back out to the same pool of donors with the same message and hope to get a different result to the one we got the last time we tried to raise money. We have to sit down as a group of HOs once elected. We have to agree a plan. We have to go out to deputies. We have to go forward with consensus. We have to do new comms. We have to build new partnerships. We have to achieve things. And then, only on an upward trend do I think we can go back out and look to raise money from new people.
Thank you. Any questions from the floor? Yes.
Thank you. Hello, my name's Jackie. I'd like to ask a question. I may be wrong, but I would have thought that the fastest growing community, Jewish community, is the Haredi community, and they don't appear to be represented very much on the board. How would you ensure that you represent their views as well as your own more diverse views?
Andrew.
Yeah. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I've worked with the Haredi community very strongly. My own background's reform, and it's been an absolute wonderful challenge, and working with organisations from Interlink to Shomrim to Hatzolah to B'Kor Cholim, and probably about 80 organisations now in the strictly Orthodox community. Myself and Judith Princely, who chairs the health group we have on the Board of Deputies, has shown that we've now created the Haredi Women's Network as part of the London Jewish Health Partnership, working, and so they are ready and wanting to take part. It's not about trying to get them to be members of the board. It's not about trying to challenge them on, you must be at the table. They were willing to take part, and that's what we've now got to do. We've got to work with them on their terms, and all those organisations in there are very happy to do it. I've had 6 calls from the Haredi community, from different organisations even today, on different areas, from police to health, to transport, to education. On all those areas, they're up for working with us. It's only up to us, we're ready to work with them.
Denise?
Well, the reality is, as Andrew's illustrated, not only in his role, but more directly with the Board of Deputies in terms of its activities on ethical medical issues, the family law group, which will encompass a range, it's part of the Defence Division, and it will encompass issues that can do, such as health issues, death, burials, as well as kashrut, marriages, because the Board of Deputies maintains marriage register, and all other issues, and including societal issues. We do work with the Haredi community. That can include, going back to the previous question on the issue of faith schools and safeguarding, because there are issues in relation to the Orthodox community in terms of that thorny issue, and also with religious issues as well. And just picking up on the issue of women, women can work effectively right across the boundary as well, including with the Haredi community. And I've done so in the past. Thank you.
Better than men?
It's different. Different.
I'm going to try a question. We talked about, thank you very much for that question. We talked about engagement within the community. I think it's worth asking something about engagement outside. Interfaith work perhaps has taken a bit of a knock recently. Interfaith work has been difficult recently. Owen, do you think it's worth engaging in?
Oh, very, very much so. And can I just give you a really good example where I think is a good model for interfaith work is the Jewish Living Experience exhibition, which I'm taking to host in Salford in August. Now, we're going to do it a little bit different in the sense that not a focus on schools. It's going to take place in a community centre on a housing estate by a shopping centre. And we're going to engage with NHS staff, housing association staff, and focusing on the adults. Because at the moment, it's the adults that really need to deal with their issues of anti-Semitism. So I think the Jewish Living Experience is a brilliant resource and we need to use it more. So I'd encourage all our communities to use it. Thank you.
Adrian?
Interfaith relationships are very important. Yes, it is a very difficult time, but I think it's important that we continue to work at those relationships and we do our best to ensure that they remain in place and are in a position to prosper. So I was fortunate enough to attend an interfaith demonstration Seder hosted by Edwin Shuker last week with members of the Muslim faith, and then a couple of weeks before that for an interfaith Seder hosted by the Board of Deputies, again with a range of faiths present. And I think it's so important that we continue those relationships. I also sit on the Faith Forum for London as well, where there is a certain amount of dialogue going on. We can't be naive about this. I mean, there are real stresses and strains, but I think that we have to take a longer-term view about this, and I think that we should never give up relationships that we have, and we should always look to try and forge new ones.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question before final statements. Yes.
Ruth Friedman, Deputy for Pinner United Synagogue. I'm sort of following on from your question, what you just said. I had just written a question. How will you reach out, and I'm asking all of you, to the non-Jewish public, and I don't mean different faiths, to get help in combating anti-Semitism? I want to speak about a film I watched on the plane back from Israel this week, Selma. Now, in the end, Martin Luther King managed to get what he wanted done by marshalling people who were white as well as of other colour. Now, how are we going to get the rest of the public who might think anti-Semitism is not that good a thing, but isn't doing anything about it, how are we going to get them to help us?
Jeremy?
There are already, first of all, thank you for that, Ruth. There are already organisations that we know, particularly in the Christian community, who are very much supportive of the State of Israel. And obviously we have to work with them, the Council of Christians and Jews. But also, I think we do need to... We need to go beyond the faiths, although to be quite honest, I'm not quite sure how. I think we need to make sure... I think this could well be worth making sure that that being Jewish, we need education is obviously part of it, and it's what Owen was saying. I've also been involved with the Jewish Living Experience exhibition. That is part of it. Also, I think explaining Israel's case, but putting it in a wider context as part of, as part of being Jewish, the importance of the land of Israel as well as the state of Israel. I think it involves working with the BBC and other TV producers, stations, to really try and get broadcasts in that put those ideas forward.
Denise?
Well, we lead by example, and I think actually there are a lot of people out there who respect the fact that we are a community that is a peaceful community that has contributed greatly to British society and beyond, and that is from our current monarch, across faith leaders, to contemporaries who I went to school with, and also beyond. So we have to stand firm as to what we believe in. We have sections of the media that are very much with us. I also look to one of our deputies who's a member of Ajax. I know that they're members of the military who have great respect for the fact that Jewish soldiers and Jewish members of the armed forces and the police work with them to promote law and order and the values of protecting our values of British society. And we've had a government that has been incredibly supportive of us. And what our key task is to work with whoever is the incoming government to make sure that that continues, and we have the funding to protect and defend our community as well. I think with the media as well, we can help.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Owen, how do we reach out to and engage the support of non-Jewish people who may have be sympathetic to our values?
Obviously, I've already mentioned about the Jewish Living Experience exhibition, but I think also it's really, really important to get involved in community activism, whether it's to do with homelessness, so on and so forth, because that's the way to build relationships and create, break down barriers. Sort of people then realise that we're all pretty similar at the end of the day, and it really is a good way when working on a common aim, combating poverty or whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is, because I think that breaks down barriers, builds positive relationships. Thank you.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think that this is a great challenge of how we work in the take on the workplace. And I think we're in the game of cultural sensitivity, cultural competence, and cultural intelligence. And what we have to do is, the board has traditionally worked on protected characteristics. That's been its core business. We have to move way beyond that. CFL have got 140,000 frontline staff. How do we educate that? We have meetings with the senior management team. They're turning around and saying, yes, we're really interested in how we address this. But they've got 140,000 frontline workers. How do we create the resources? How do we work? That's what we need to fundraise for, Ben. That's what we're going to go out and show that we've got a different project to everyone else. And we've got to take a view, whether it be the NHS, whether it be the police, whether it be the fire service. How do we actually change people out there and really address this? We're going to be the organisation that develops a strong relationship with UK institutions. We're going to do the work, and we're going to make it different.
Adrian?
So we are a small community, but I think, as everyone else here has said in different ways, that we have to look to leverage, we have to look to lever, and that's finding ways to access other institutions and organisations which can throw a greater influence. So, for example, obvious point, political parties, political leadership. If you have good relationships within the mainstream political parties, and you can get out political messaging through their own political education and broadcasts and the way in which they conduct their affairs, that's worth an awful lot. The same with the civic authorities, the various mayors, the mayors of Manchester, London and elsewhere. again, have a great deal of influence. Andrew mentioned TfL, there's the Met Police, there's there's the NHS. I've been discussing with a doctor in Manchester, for example, how you address the issue of anti-Semitism within the health service. But just beyond that, and just to finish off, my sense is that the general public are with us, for example, around the demonstrations in the middle of London. Likewise, I think it's likely that the American public are with us over the occupations of the universities. So we shouldn't give up hope, but it's a question of how we access that and how we utilise it.
Well, to conclude the evening, the candidates will now give closing statements limited to about a minute and a half. Again, the order has been chosen randomly, and Jeremy, you are the first of those.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for asking the questions that you asked. I mean, really very, very interesting, and some very, very difficult ones, challenging ones, but, you know, all grist to the mill. And thanks to my colleagues as well. You know, I think you see we all get on very well, and whoever gets elected, I'm sure it will be a very collegiate group. But in finishing off, I'm asking some questions. Do you want a regional deputy at the top table who has successfully fought to increase the board's presence in the regions? Do you want a fighter who has removed barriers to regional deputies and involvement and would like to do the same in South London? Do you want someone unconnected with any political movement who can unite deputies behind an agreed agenda? Then please give me your first preference vote for Vice President. Thank you very much indeed.
Andrew.
We've done a lot of engagement in the board and together with London Jewish Forum. South West London Jewish Concerns has got... Sorry, someone took it away from me. I'm sorry.
Let's start again.
Thank you very much. We've done a lot of engagement with London Jewish Forum on WhatsApp groups. A WhatsApp group, an emergency Jewish concerns group, it's got in it the chair of the synagogue, it's got in it the rabbi, it's got in it the security head, it's got in it the schools, the head teacher, and it's also got in it the MPs, it's got in it the assembly member, the leaders of the council and the police. In South West London, we've got 60 members of South West London Jewish Concerns. Jeremy, we're doing the work, and actually I want to see Bury Jewish Concerns formed in a similar way, and Salford Jewish Concerns. When I met the leaders of Bury Council and Salford Council, and also went to see Rochdale, I realised the work we had to do in the north, and I'd beforehand spoken with Mark Levy and Mark Eddlestone about that work. We've got to realise the JLC does great work, and we can be a wonderful partner, but we've got something different in our political context, and we've got to use them. So no peacocking, no just doing it for the purpose of the photo. We've got to make sure we go into every meeting with a business book, outcomes and follow-up. We've got to talk about collaboration, co-production, co-delivery. We're not in the business of snapshot manifestos. We're in the business of constant contact. We're going to be engaging left, right and centre. We're going to be engaging in this country, Israel, the States. We've got a lot of work to do, and it's going to be fun, and the board's going to be a great organisation for us all to be part of.
Ben?
I want to thank you all for coming here tonight, especially given the competition, in particular the Chelsea-Spurs game, which is 1-0 at half-time.
Who to?
Spoiler alert.
Spoilers. It's been great to hear from all my potential future colleagues, and I don't envy everyone here in making a decision. I know that everyone else on the table is looking forward to the election on the 12th of May. I'm looking forward to the 13th of May and the team that will build and go out and work together to deliver on everything we want to achieve.
Denise.
Everybody, I just want to thank you so much for being here and for your questions. It's been a pleasure to rise to the challenge of answering them, and that's how it should be. I want to bring to the for the board's benefit my long-standing experience at the board. I've served under Johnny Arkush on the Defence Division, and I think that I have the combination of judgment, skills set, and media-trained skills to make a difference for you, each of you in the wider Jewish community. And I do seek your vote, and I also feel that there should be a woman, HO, who can bring a different dimension and also genuinely contribute to issues such as gender violence and empowering women, because women have taken a long time to get to the top table, and the board is genuinely the cross-communal organisation that encourages female talent. So I hope that that will help. I'm attuned to diversity, bringing forward younger deputies, empowering them, and also us standing strong and firm and proud as the representative body for British Jury and beyond. Thank you.
Owen, your final statement, please.
Please support me and be part of a wonderful change where the Board of Deputies leads by example on disability inclusion and becomes a model of excellence. Thank you.
Adrian.
Thank you. I just first of all want to say thank you to everyone who's come this evening and for the questions that have been put. And I think it's always a source of learning for us as candidates as well, and helps us to refine our thinking. And likewise, I'd like to thank, as well as Johnny's chairing, my fellow candidates as well, because although I've now been in a number of hustings with them and have got to know them even better than I did before, I've also learnt an awful lot from all of them, and I hope that all of us, regardless of the outcome of these elections, continue to contribute towards the community. We're undoubtedly in very choppy waters, and I think it goes without saying that you need seasoned, experienced people at the helm to help navigate the great ship that is the Board of Deputies. But at the end of the day, the board is a collective endeavour. We have to engender a sense of common ownership. Deputies have to feel enfranchised and involved in a meaningful way. And so I very much am standing on the basis that I want to create and help engender, with the help of everybody else, some cultural change, as well as being quite clear in our strategic purpose and a sense of our position within the community. I think that the board has had a great and illustrious history, but I really also think we have big challenges ahead of us. We have to be very open-eyed about those, very clear-sighted, and I think that I'm someone, and I'm not saying that everyone else here hasn't to a greater or lesser degree, but I do think I do have that insight, and I do hope that you're able to support me. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming tonight, for coming out in the evening. I would like to thank the candidates very much for giving up yet more time for our greater communal benefit and for subjecting themselves to the excellent questions that we've heard tonight. It's 6 years since I stood down, and like most of my predecessors, I've kept away from the day-to-day fray in the main, but I've never in any sense lessened my connection with or my regard for the Board of Deputies. I hope that the wider community out there will have seen from the candidates for Treasurer and Vice President tonight that we have people of genuine quality and breadth of outlook who are prepared to stand up and step up to the plate for our community, and that is a great sign of health. I am looking forward to the election, and whoever succeeds as president of the board will have some very strong vice presidents who will be there in their support and on your behalves as leading members of our community, protecting and defending us, because that in the end is what the board is about. And who knows one of the people to my right or to my left might in 3 or 6 years' time indeed aspire to step up to the presidency of the Board of Deputies, which de facto is the lay leader of our community. So thank you all again. We are living in some very difficult, very challenging, frankly very frightening times, and we're going to need your support so that the Board of Deputies can be as effective and supported as possible and can have a great range of talent from which to choose so that we can speak up effectively for our community. And frankly, I have to say now, I never thought I would, for our very safety. Thank you all very much indeed. Have a good evening.